Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast, brought to you by Rocket Agency. I'm your host, James Lawrence. Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast. I'm here today with Laura Roberts. Laura, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, James. It's great to be here.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. So Laura is MD APAC of Invent. Invent is a global brand experience agency. Invent APAC has worked with, I was kind of looking at the website, Laura, and it's essentially a who's who of household brands. We've got Emirates, Amex, TEDx, Rolls-Royce, SAP, the Australian government. I won't go through the full list, but essentially Invent APAC and then Invent globally has worked with essentially everyone you can imagine and has won, a list of awards too big to name. Laura herself has 20 years of experiential marketing experience across Australia, the US, the Middle East, and Singapore. So today we're going to be going deep into experiential marketing. So I thought, Laura, just to start the conversation off, how did the journey begin for you in the space?
Fun story, actually. So going back to the very early 2000s, and I'd be in my bedroom watching Sex and the City and shamefully, The Apprentice, but they were my go-to TV shows.
It was different back then.
It was different back then, everyone. And I just became obsessed with New York, basically. And I worked really hard in the pub and saved up as much money as possible, drained my bank account and shoved it all in a sock and went and took myself to New York City. And I was so lucky to land on my feet really quickly over there. And I landed a job with a company that's production company that just did events for musicians, basically. So all their private events. So one moment I was doing, the launch of the Rolling Stones tour to working with Lenny Kravitz, the Who, Counting Crows, Network Upfront. And it was I was just absolutely blown away by the experience and thought, I'm going to be staying in New York for some time. And then I ended up getting the next job in agency land. And that's really where it started for me in New York. And that was also incredible, working for huge brands, and they have insane budgets in the US as well. So that's super fun. And my bosses over there were at this agency, Scott Culper and Christina McCoubrey. And in 2008, we actually left that agency and started Invent. So I have the official title of first employee of Invent.
Number one.
I'm waiting for my plaque or statue or something. Nothing's come yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen. But yes, I carry that title. So we started Invent in 2008 in New York City, and we're in a very small office opposite Balthazar. Well, our meetings were at Balthazar, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we grew really quickly. They are still leadership today. A lot of other people that joined us still with the business today. I actually ended up leaving New York in 2009, I think it was. So it was just sort of time to come home.
Yep.
Recession happened too. So it was just a good time to come back to Australia. And I was working with a whole bunch of other great agencies across Asia Pacific, but always really wanted to work with Invent. That was home for me.
Yeah.
And then I finally got the call in 2017 that Invent were ready to come out to Australia or to Asia Pacific region. And I had the privilege of opening up the office here in Sydney in 2017 and Singapore shortly after that. And here we are now. We've got 40 employees, working with all the major brands, won all the major awards, as you mentioned earlier, and having a good fun time doing. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
All started by shoving a whole bunch of money into a sock. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
how big now globally is Invent?
We have 10 offices across 7 different countries and about 180 employees. So we're still privately owned agency, which is quite rare for someone at this scale.
Yeah.
And we very much operate as a global company as well, which we can do, just having that more flexibility and privately owned. So for our when we're building out a strategy or creative, we can tap into our design studio in Sweden. We can tap on the shoulder of creatives in New York City, and we can execute our shows all over the world and tap into our teams on the ground to help support. So it really is a truly global company that we have.
It's kind of a nice size, isn't it? You can often independent agencies or independent businesses struggle because you don't have that global footprint, and hence the globals kind of get a lot of work, don't they? But if you kind of can still cover the globe and have that skill set in house. You kind of get the best of both worlds.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yep.
Should be in there selling for you. Positioning the agency.
Well, you've done it. Yeah, great job so far.
I'd be. I think for the audience, like experiential marketing, like what is it? I think just to unpack it at its kind of at its core form.
We do get
Speak,
asked that all the time.
yeah, speak
I
to me.
think, yeah, I think of it like in the most simplistic form. It's anything that's like non-traditional advertising. So it's brand centric. We're working for brands. It can be immersive, it can be interactive, it can be a live event, it can be a campaign, a non-traditional campaign. It could be metaverse, tech based, anything that's non-traditional, right down to your very basic high end 50 packs dinner. So, I mean, on any given day, we could be doing a B2B conference of 4,000 packs. So, we produce all the, it's called XeroCon at Xero, which is an online accounting platform, their tier one
Yep.
event. We
Yep.
just delivered one in Nashville. A few months earlier, we delivered in London. A few months before that was in Sydney. So we tour that show around the world. It's a 2-day event, 4,000 people plus. It's
Yeah.
conference, breakouts, it's tech, it's expo, it's exhibitors. It's parties, so the wildest parties that you can imagine. So that's at the really
Those finance people.
don't underestimate it. It's been dubbed by the media as the Coachella for accountants. So they really party. And then we can go through to doing like activations. So we've recently just done this incredible activation for COP28 United Nations in Dubai, which is all technology led. We could be activating for Amazon House, building out experiential in a shopping mall for them. And then we'll move into more like campaigns, which I mean, they're so vast, but just recently you might have seen the big campaign, a tour announcement for The Weeknd, the band.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it was live projections on some iconic buildings in Melbourne saying the end is near. And we went totally viral all over the news. And that was us behind that.
Nice.
So that was just more of a content-led campaign.
Yep.
Um, and then influencer events are really popular as well. So we could be doing, launching a new show for Netflix or doing an event for a clothing brand that's influencer-led, right down then to the sort of B2B, more intimate events that, for example, we do all the series C-suite events for American Express, which might be 50 or 100 packs in really unique locations at a high end. So it's a pretty vast scale
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
work that we do, but all super interesting and all with brands at the heart of it. Kind of.
So really the event component, because I think there's that kind of what's event marketing versus a bit. So it's essentially events being a part of experiential and probably quite a big part of, but then it being much more than that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And really trying to push, don't just do an event for the sake of an event, think what happens beforehand and think what happens afterwards as well. So it becomes much more of a 360
Yeah.
campaign.
And then would you be working like with like the weekend example, for instance, would that be your team coming up with all those creative ideas, or are you working with creative agencies or in-house teams? Like how's it generally kind of structured?
So we do it all in-house. We have an awesome team here that we have strategists, we have creatives, we have design directors, we have a whole art department, we have 3D environmental, we have partnerships, we have Unreal Engine specialists, and of course we have the production team that actually make it all happen.
Yeah.
So we do it all in-house and we partner with the brand to deliver their message. So in the case of The Weeknd, that was for our client Live Nation.
Yep.
So they come to us when they have the bands that want to launch, and they of course all have their guidelines, and the individual band members have to approve what they're doing, which is super cool because then they promote it too on their socials, and that's really rewarding when we see that. But everything's done in-house with our team, and I think we've having the luxury of building the business here under the umbrella of New York. I've really been able to sort of handpick the team here, and they all just come from such a diverse background. So we have gators, and we have tattoo artists, and we have surfers, and we have people come from the music industry, clothing. One of the key designers, the Stussy, is here, and so it's a real mixed background, which is really cool because it just brings so much creativity,
Yeah.
I think, to the work that we do.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So I think I guess the big direction of the conversation today in the pod was to kind of get under the hood and look at like trends in the space, right? Like, kind of
Mhm.
what are you seeing at the moment? And then
Yeah.
I guess later on we can have a chat about what the future looks like. But yeah, I'd be really keen to hear, like, we're kind of out of COVID now. We're kind of people are mingling again. There's a lot of people that
Mhm.
yeah, life has changed to some extent. Some stuff has gone back to normal, but like, what are the big trends in the space at the moment?
Yeah, so I think like what's really important is to first of all identify who the audience is and
Yep.
then build around what their wants and needs and what's trending with that audience. And what happened now is that our generations are so different and there's multiple
Mhm.
generations. So the on mass marketing, traditional marketing, I don't think cuts it anymore. You can't really produce one $5 million ad and expect that it's going to land across all the generations.
Yep.
So I guess if what I like to do is sort of break down each generation. So we sort of start with the boomers, who are the 60 to sort of 78-year-olds. And so a lot of
Yep.
them might be exiting or exited the workforce. But there's a lot of them leading major organizations as well, right?
For sure.
And they, of course, without going into too much detail, have their own characteristics and traits, which are quite likely going to collide with, the younger generation. So the change can be hard at that level, but not typically an audience that our brands are communicating to, just
Yep.
who we work with. But so then we get to Generation X, which is our 45 to 59. They make up a large portion of the B2B events that we do. So they're often, if we receive this brief, then we're going to come from the perspective of making them like really highly curated events. We want like thoughtful, handcrafted gifts or invites. We always get the brief money can't buy experience
Mm.
for this cohort. So I mentioned before the American Express C-suite series that we do, which really kind of fits into this demographic, and it
Yeah.
lands really well, and they love it. But that's not to say you can't you can't experiment with technology too. So another really cool campaign that we did during COVID actually was when Ferrari had all their cars stuck and couldn't get them into the showrooms and no one could go into the showrooms and test drive them.
Yeah.
So we built a campaign for them called Ferrari Virtually Yours. And we actually created in VR that you were actually driving the Ferrari through all the different streets around the different showrooms that they
Yeah.
would have gone to and did it the whole audio scape and everything. I think they ended up selling more from that campaign than what they typically did. It was really
Everyone had cash to splash during they were locked
yes,
up.
yeah, exactly. But it was still crafted, I think, quite personalized for their high end spenders, and that was really well received.
Yeah.
So that's how we would sort of approach campaigns for the Generation X.
And that's actually a thing that you'll have it will commonly be in a brief is this cohort wants well, this group that we're trying to market towards values kind of experiences that money can't buy. That's kind of
Exactly.
the briefs that you
Yeah.
get. Yep.
And trying to get our clients to identify what that audience is
Yeah.
and kind of say, yes, here's who we're
Yeah.
targeting. Because that
So
helps
with
drive
them,
the rate.
so
Yeah.
with Amex, without going into anything you can't, it's, you're curating a very small group of people at an establishment that's, wonderful and excellent, bringing
Mhm.
guests in or people in or something like access that you otherwise simply couldn't kind of get maybe
Exactly.
off the street. Yeah.
Yeah. And creating environments for networking, I think is really important at this sort of C-suite level as well,
Yeah.
where they get those like conversations, with their peers. And then we get to Generation Y, which is our 30s to 44.
Yeah.
Um, so the key trends that we're seeing for this demographic are sustainability, diversity, inclusion, wellness, work-life balance. They're very purpose-driven, like collaboration, and then
Yeah.
an element of surprise and delight. So, um, you know, keeping these experiences, these characteristics in mind, what sort of experience, do we create for them? So an example that I can give was just last week at South by Southwest. We produced the Aussie Broadband expo stand. So it was right center stage in the middle of the tech and innovation expo. So everyone around had the VR experience and the
Mm.
LED screens. We went completely analog and offline. We built the whole stand using recyclable sort of reboard materials. It was super Instagrammable. So it was really fun to hang out at. We had a Hills Hoist goon bag style for merch giveaways.
That's great.
We had a sausage sizzle every lunchtime, and honestly, it just went off. It was the most popular stand. Everyone was coming from outside of the expo to come and check it out.
Yep.
It just really resonated, I think, with this group. They appreciated it. They wanted to take their photo, but they also wanted a place that they could talk, and they knew it was a sustainable stand,
That's
and
awesome.
they could network. So, and I think in this kind of space too, we're really seeing a lot of brand partnerships as well. Like we're seeing Lego teaming up with every brand everywhere.
Yeah.
With the surfboards, it's sort of a lot of brand collaboration seems to be kind of targeted at this space.
Yep.
Then we move into Generation Z or Z, which is about 15 to 29-year-olds. And this is all, well, no surprise to you, content, and more content. So it's, we're on platforms like TikTok. TikTok are a big partner of ours, actually, client of ours. They're on YouTube. It's all experiences designed for social media platforms. And this is where we're really seeing our brands wanting to do influencer events. They use
Yeah.
KOLs to drive their brand marketing. And now we're having, for example, other platforms like Spotify say that they're going to be really moving into being a big player in video content as well. So this is really what, if we had a brief for this sort of generation, where this is what
Yep.
we'd be, well, what can we get onto the social media platforms and who can we use from an influencer and KOL point of view to help amplify that
And,
message?
and what does that mean? Like less in person focus for that cohort?
No, it doesn't. So what it means is still gathering together. They still want to get together. They still want to do these events. We're doing a really cool upcoming event. I probably can't share too much about, but this will be with Levi's. It will be with influencers and KOLs, and it's coming together in a very cool location somewhere around the world. It's going to be hands-on workshops, but also everything's designed
Mm.
to be to come back onto content later. So it's creating those experiences that, as everyone says, Instagrammable moments, but really just where they can create content and have it stream out on
Yeah.
those platforms.
It's so interesting. I was went to South by Southwest last week and went to the Invent Discovery stage. Laura, I was
Mhm.
of course, wouldn't miss it. It was
Yes.
very, it was cool. It was very cool. But yeah, what was it? We went to one of the musical performances on one of the nights, and it was so interesting. The room very because at South by Southwest you have a whole bunch of venues afterwards, pubs and venues
Mhm.
around, and some
Mhm.
will have room for a couple hundred people, and some have rooms that literally you fit 15 people in, kind of thing. And I was watching this young rapper from, I think, from Atlanta. He'd flown over for it. There would have
Mhm.
been probably 15 people in the room. It was a really, really small room by design. And he
Yeah.
had a video person with him, right? And it
Mhm.
was just so interesting, kind of thinking that the in person experience, which was awesome, it was really cool, but 15 people kind of watching it, and that content will be seen
Mhm.
by dozens, hundreds,
Millions.
thousands, tens of thousands more, as time kind of goes by. And the in person experience in so many different context is only just a small fraction now of kind of the reach of that experience, right?
That's
With the
exactly right.
sharing content.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So it's not. So it's no. We're still going to have people will always want to connect. That's never going to change. Doesn't matter how much technology that we get thrown at us. We still want to connect. But it definitely technology and social gives just more opportunity for sending out the message to a much
Yeah.
wider audience.
What like what has been the because I guess we're long enough out of COVID now, I think, for stuff
Yeah.
to cut, because right sizing is not the right word, but to kind of, I guess, some
Hmm.
of the things to kind of come back to where they might be long term. We're
Hmm.
starting to see more pressure on people to come back into the office and those types of things. And obviously during COVID, everything went online and webinars and in our industry exploded, and
Hmm.
conferences a lot of conferences haven't really come back yet in kind of the digital marketing space, which is it's
Mhm.
always been a bit fledgling in terms of conferences in Australia. But even in America, I think there's less digital marketing conferences than there were prior to COVID. They've kind of struggled to bring them back. What are you
Mhm.
seeing in terms of trends for not just conferences, but just as it relates to kind of in-person events? Has COVID did it make a lasting impact, or has it kind of everything come back to normal, or is it even different?
Um, yeah, look, like a lot of the large events have come back. I think though that in the corporate space we've seen in the music industry, it hasn't recovered. Festivals are now, just the cost to run them, which is so sad.
Mm,
That hasn't really bounced back, and who knows when it will, or will it be a different format? Um, but the hype of online virtual events, I think virtual events is a trigger word for many people that work in my industry, had somewhat dwindled, and it was all about in person. Um, but I think, again, that's why it's important to look at these generations, because it really does make sense for quite a few of these generations that, yes, you do stream. um, for example, we do all in the US, the launches of the major Samsung phones, and they come out and that's screened to 60 million people.
yeah, yeah,
Do these generations that I've mentioned now, do they want to go online and participate in a virtual event? Um, not really, no, no.
yeah,
But to get them to leave their home and knowing how valuable their time is, you have to ensure that that experience is worthwhile their time.
yeah.
But I think this actually leads up to what I think is like probably the most fascinating, which is all future trends and what will drive future trends, which is our generation Alpha, Gen A, which is our
Okay.
2010 to 2024. This is my kids. They might be your kids.
Well,
Age.
this is terrifying because I didn't know there was a gener I didn't know there was
This,
a I didn't know that generation
well,
existed,
this
and that is my children.
This is gonna blow your mind. So I recently, we had Mark McCrindle from McCrindle, and he's a futurist. He was
Yep.
on the discovery stage for Invent, and they've just released their study on Gen A. And so
I'm making notes here. These are
make notes.
personal notes. Yeah.
This is gonna blow your mind. So by 2025, which is next year, they will number almost 2 billion. So
Mm,
that's the largest generation in the history of the world, which is crazy. So whilst they're the youngest generation, they have brand influence and purchasing power beyond their years. Don't
mm,
our bank accounts know it?
yeah,
And soon their economic footprint will reach more than US 5 trillion. So
mm,
this is a generation that all brands and workplaces, everyone needs to start thinking about them right now. They're, of course, the most technologically advanced generation, which is why um, we're we're really doubling down on this, and we have a whole innovation arm called Invent Atom, which is led out of our Singapore team. And this is all the work that we're doing now is really in preparation for how we're going to communicate and create experiences for this generation. Um, so the key sort of trends, I guess, around this generation, which I think then will drive future trends and what we need to think about now. Obvious AI, robotics, chat GPT, VR and AR, automation, EV, driverless, the gig economy. That's obviously huge.
yeah,
Um, they will have multiple careers. Like I think I heard something like up to 14 careers or something.
yeah,
Cultural diversity, lifelong learning, thanks to accessibility of online education.
mm,
Um, they're not going to come into the office much. They're gonna be at home forever, apparently. They're gonna move out for a really long
playing
time.
Fortnite.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm just so fascinated by this, A, because like you, there are our kids that we're sort of, watching grow up. But also they're gonna really influence like all of our jobs and how we
Mm,
are, in 10 years' time, and how we're leading our own agencies and creating their workplaces, and the how brands are communicating with them. So so I think right now when they're a bit younger, if a brand wants to communicate with this very large cohort, which they should be thinking about, they're activating in Roblox. They've got this
yeah,
big hype plan that's like on all the social media platforms and live streams. And they've got influencers that are connected to it also, doing streaming for them. And then you want to have your in-person, real life experience that they go to, that their parents are going to take them to, where they're going to get their merch and meet the stars or whatever. So it's a
Yeah.
really kind of different way of approaching a sort of experiential strategy because it is cohort. So it's
Really
sort of
interesting.
it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm going to mangle the stats, so I won't even go there, but it was a stat at South by Southwest just around the size of the gaming industry as it
Mm,
relates to kind of
mm,
film, TV, and it
yeah.
kind of dwarfed them, you know what I mean? And it is, you look at the money being poured in and the pressure for parents to buy these digital kind of assets that kind of
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not,
it's
I'm going to
pretty
get
crazy.
off my old man soapbox and won't go too deep into it, but it is, it's incredible. And the impact of influencers is just phenomenal in terms of
Well, I
that
think
being,
also what will happen too, which is like it's so relevant for you and for your agency is that the sort of 2D, websites are going to be completely overhauled. So they're online and they're shopping. They're going to be in a metaverse doing that. And we've spent a lot of time in this space. We've got Unreal Engine developers and figuring out, what the right technology is underneath that to make it accessible. But it will become very normal that you're shopping in your, you know, Lamborghini um, immersive environment, metaverse space, and then you're going to cross over to Coca-Cola land and collect things as you go, and it'll be pretty wild. But the way that online now, when everyone's shopping online, will need a big overhaul, I think.
and how do you, yeah, like how do you back the right horse on that? Just because they do, like obviously Meta has invested so much in the metaverse, and like how do you ensure as an agency that you kind of have the capability to put your clients into a space where there are eyeballs and there's growth and first mover advantage and all those types of things, but also not moving so quickly that you're kind of
Mhm.
moving into a space where the eyeballs aren't yet in.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. I mean, so for us, we spent a good 3 or 4 years. I think we first kind of entered into the space in around 2020 and really just doing a lot of internal work for ourselves, like building out metaverses and testing and using different technologies. So that was obviously a pretty significant investment to do that. But that's sort of where we, you know, really put our investment into. We also NFTs, huge hype. We did a very cool campaign with Lamborghini, but instead of just being a NFT, we actually took a physical car, so their last ever Aventador,
Mm.
um, a petrol powered Aventador before came off the line and they all went electric. So the very last one that they produced, and we did a brand collab. So we got in Steve Aoki, who's the world's number one DJ, Krista Kim, who is an amazing artist in 3D metaverse space. So Steve Aoki created this unique play track, which went into the car. Krista Kim did a whole metaverse. We created an NFT attached to the actual car. And then the event, I guess, was the auction of it. So we mixed in so many different campaigns into it, but it was the most successful organic campaign I think that Lamborghini had. The metrics were absolutely huge. Um,
Where the car
so we
sell
did,
for?
the highest, for an Aventador that they had. So what was the exact number now? But it was the
It's
highest
kind of
ever.
creating
For a
something
30
out of
year old,
nothing, isn't it?
like a really young kid.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, a lot of money. So, you know, yeah. So I think, like you're seeing some brands just go all in, and they're experimenting and
Yeah,
just seeing what works and doesn't work, and they have to be prepared to do that. Others are just going to sit right back and just wait for everybody else to do it, and then they'll figure it out. So,
yeah,
but those who really start to own the space, will, be the most successful at the end, I think.
yeah. Nice one. It kind of segues nicely. Like, how does experiential marketing fit into the overall marketing mix? Like, how do you find it um, works together with broader strategies?
Um, well, I'm biased. I guess so.
Should be the
Uh,
strategy.
so it should be 100% of your marketing budget. But I don't know that. Well, I don't think people are watching ads anymore. And you
Laura,
know,
Laura, Laura. Well,
television ads. That is,
oh,
everyone
that's
is.
fine. Yeah,
All
no
the
one's
ads are
watching them.
coming. Not yes, yes, of course.
They're all it's all
It's
BVOD,
all
which we buy for our clients and put
exactly.
onto
That's
catch
exactly
up
it.
TV.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So you're really splitting your budget between experiential and then digital advertising, which is what you guys do. And I'm actually not lying. I actually do think that's the right approach going forward. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Like, I think audiences, particularly the younger generations, like they just want more from brands now. Like, if they're going to buy from them, and they want more, not just like on mass marketing.
Mm,
Got to be more personalized and targeted, and yeah.
yeah. And there is such a power to um, real world interactions with a brand, right?
Mm.
Like all
Yeah.
interactions with a brand, whether digital or real world, have an impact, but I think some have a bigger impact than others, right? And how people feel after leaving the Aussie Broadband um, section of South by Southwest, the big MailChimp installation, which was kind of pretty prominent.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
it leaves, but all touch points leave a lasting
Yeah.
impression, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
This might be a hard one to answer, but
Mm.
what it's a lot of I think the listenership is pretty split. We've got some in-house marketers of big brands. We've also got
Mhm.
marketers working for smaller brands. What like advice, tips, tricks would you have to marketers who, yeah, we're not Lamborghini, we're not Netflix, like we have pretty modest budgets when we're coming into this type of area. Like any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I I don't think it's like the more money you have, the more you win at all. I think it's just about being really smart with what you do. And we personally love challenger brands, which are the brands that, aren't as commonly heard of, or they're just sort of coming up. And I think it's just been really clever with how you activate and how you communicate. So a lot of the campaigns that I've mentioned to you, they're not multi-million dollar budget at all. So
Yeah,
for example, the weekend that we had to do a announcement, I mean, it was not, it was a very modest budget that we could push so far because of the really smart hype planning that we
mm,
put around it in terms of how it was picked up by media. So from what was something that we executed in a matter of a couple of weeks, on limited budget, it was quite a guerrilla campaign, mind you.
yeah,
Old school projections on a building. There's no
yeah,
CGI, there's no this and that.
yeah,
And it just went absolutely viral. So I think if you've got the right partner
yeah,
to help you work out your creative strategy uh, that resonates with the audience, then you'll be successful with whatever you do.
yeah. Nice one. It's kind of the power of an idea, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's a good one. Laura, it's been awesome chatting all things experiential. I'm kind of getting there with my struggling away. Um, we always end the pod with what's the one best piece of advice you'd give to an in-house marketer? So
Mhm.
it can be kind of applied, but also really happy for it just to be career, like kind of, based on your experience professionally. Like, what is that one bit of advice you'd give to a marketer out there that's kind of making their way through and,
Such a
wanting
great
to succeed?
question. You know what? I think like I, I would say, having gone through COVID and now just this kind of crazy, are you in the office? Are you not in the office? Whatever situation they're going to, whatever happens moving forward. The one thing I'm all about, being flexible and empowering people and remote learning as well, work as well. But I just worry that for the generations coming up, like how do they learn and
Hmm.
how do they interact and who's taking care of them when they're sitting in their bedroom working and maybe their job won't need that. But I would say for anyone that's particularly that's coming up in our space or any space is like find a mentor
Hmm.
and um, and most people will be so happy, if not privileged, to be asked, to mentor and then work out a plan with them. And I was very lucky to have a mentor, which is actually my boss that she stayed my mentor for many years, even when I wasn't with Invent, and that just helped
Yeah.
guide me through many, many, many years of work and decisions. So that would be probably my piece of advice. Find your mentor.
I think it's great. I think you touched on it. It's I did a presentation at a university recently. It was kind of like kind of getting up career advice, how to get into marketing. There was kind
Mhm.
of four of us on the panel, and that topic was raised. And I think one of the audience members was kind of, yeah, but surely no one wants to do it. And I said, like, honestly, people like you'll be surprised how high up you can go because
Mhm.
most people just want to help and most people want to give. And as long as you're serious about it, and as long as if the commitment is catching up for coffee once a month, and in between you're going to go off and do certain things and report back and be accountable. If you take it seriously, like most people I've come across very generous with their time.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the bit about in office is true, and we've got a pretty flexible approach at Rocket in terms of a kind of a hybrid approach. But it's one of the big things you can't get right is that the water cooler type experiences or just the
Mhm.
incidental learning from people senior to you. And doesn't mean, if you work office hybrid, then you have the right to obviously work hard from
Or
home.
or
But
junior too. Like,
yeah,
younger ones, they teach us new things every day.
yeah, yeah, both
Probably
ways.
language. I don't know what
Yeah, that's
anything means
right.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Generation A.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's totally it. And I think if you, if you want to become the partner of a law firm, then you kind of probably want to be around the partners that have already done it. And if you want to be running an agency, then you probably want to be, learning as much as you can. And, which is, I think, so different from just doing your job well and getting a fair paycheck for a fair day's work. I think you do stand to gain so much by immersing yourself as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming onto the pod. It's been an awesome
Thank you for
conversation.
having me. It's been
Nice one.
fun.
Thanks, Laura.